Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard video. So, today's video, I haven't really got a structure for or format for. It's just a bit of a, I don't know, like one of the amusing, a rambling maybe. It's discussing the difference between building an army and collecting a force or collecting a faction. So, the difference, before we get into what the difference is, I'll go into what sort of prompted this video. Since 8th edition has dropped, I've seen a lot of instances of people going on sort of the internet and finding these really amazing lists based on broken units. Maybe it was, early days it was things like razor wing flock spam, when it turned out that the Dark Elder Razorwing flocks were just stupidly cheap for the number of wounds you got, and they were really fast. And there was a guy at my club who I know who said the reason why people were able to, this Razorwing flock spam was turning up everywhere because he nicknamed it the Cake Topper Army, because they're on eBay. You could buy these dove cake toppers, like little flocks of dove cake toppers for wedding cakes and stuff, and people were literally buying those and gluing them onto bases, and you could buy 1,000 of these cake toppers for or 100 of these cake toppers I should say, for £10, and grab yourself some spare bases and you were good to go. And for 50, if including some characters and stuff, for about £50 you could buy yourself this tournament breaking army. And then you had things like Brimstone Horror Spam. Now, I never faced this, but I know that basically Brimstone Horrors were 2 points a model, and you could make them have a ridiculously good invulnerable save, and they could be made -1 to hit and all this kind of stuff, and it was crazy. They were stupidly powerful, and people were taking huge horror armies, because once you killed the horrors, then they would split down into blue horrors, to split down into pink horrors. Pink horrors would split down to blue horrors would split down to brimstones, and essentially you had to kill the enemy's army 3 times. And I remember seeing a video by Mini Wargaming, of all people. I think it was Quirk. I haven't watched. I used to be a Vault member. I don't think I am anymore. And he went out and he had this whole sort of 5-minute video explaining why Brimstone Horrors were amazing, and he went out and bought 20, 30 boxes of Brimstone Horrors. Just because he was like, this is the best army ever. This is what you can do with it. Another example, Storm Raven spam. People were worked out that if you got a bunch of Storm Ravens and you put them around Gilliman, that they were just absolutely unbelievably powerful, and you couldn't beat that. And I saw that army in action, and it just tabled pretty much anything it came across. The point I'm trying to make here is that all the armies that I've given examples of there, those 3, they're gone now. They're no good anymore. They have all been FAQ'd, or rules have been introduced to stop them from working. And that is the sort of... I'm starting to see people give up this old 7th edition mentality of go out and buy the most powerful army. Because back in the day you could go out and buy that really powerful army. Wolfstar, for example, was around for 2 editions. It was so reliably good. And the point is that that's no longer possible, because that's an old mentality. And I've seen so many people at my club literally go out, buy these armies, and then a month later, then literally within a month, they're no longer viable, and they have to get rid of them. And they literally have to sell them for maybe they get their money back. Maybe they don't. I know it's caused a lot of people, even it got to the point where people were, were doing massive orders of China recasts. Now, I don't use China recasts, but I don't care if people do. Doesn't I'm not Games Workshop. That's definitely a topic for another day. But people were buying. They saw. I can't remember which. It was months ago. It's when 8th edition sort of first came out, when Games Workshop were releasing FAQs thick and fast, and people all clubbed together at my gaming club to buy do a big China order, and it was it was a huge volume of models, and it was going to take a while for them to arrive. I think it was going to take over a month for them to arrive. Well, lo and behold, I think it was 3 weeks later, the army had been made invalid. I think it was Brimstone Horrors. I think they'd all bought a huge amount of Brimstone Horrors from China, because it's it's very cheap to buy them from China, and they were all invalid by the time they turned up. It was just something crazy. It was all just a massive waste of money, and they were stuck with these useless models. I might not be remembering the example correctly, but the whole point is that this mentality of buying Army of the Month is much less viable than it used to be. And this also comes down to what I'm talking about, which is the difference between buying an army and collecting a faction. I think the point of this, a lot of people are saying that Games Workshop is doing it to create balance. They don't want things to remain overpowered for too long, and they want to try and promote 40k as being a bit more of a serious game. They want, you can play narrative, you can play open play, and that's if you're casual, but they want to promote the 40k tournament scene again. I think there's a second part to it, which is Games Workshop is trying to tell us, buy what you want. Okay, buy what you want. There's no need to worry about whether something is really good or really bad. Just buy what you want. Okay? Because essentially at one point or another it's gonna be viable. And also because a good example would be there's a guy at my club, and I get on really, really well with him, and he's I think he's a great guy. But he jumped on the Guard bandwagon when 8th first dropped, and he bought a huge amount of Guard, and he bought a huge conscript army. Well, now he's selling it. He's trying to sell his Guard army, basically. He's sold off huge amounts of it. And I know a few other people which are really trimming the fat as well, just selling off loads and loads of these of their Guard collections, because they bought armies. They bought a conscript army. Conscripts are no longer viable. So I'm seriously tempted. I might pick up a whole. I mean, I don't need it, but I'm kind of tempted to pick up 200 guardsmen for a really, really good deal. It'll be something like that. I'll have to have a word with him. But what Games Workshop was trying to encourage us to do is to collect a faction. Because if you collect a faction, and the reason why I've always encouraged people to collect a faction, not an army. If you want to collect Dark Elder, and you're doing what I like to do, and putting together different lists to see what what comes up, and you might finally decide, I want to collect let's go for a classic Dark Elder Raider list. I want lots of Cavalite Warriors in Raiders. I don't want Venoms, I want Cavalite Raiders in Venoms, I want some Ravagers, and maybe I want a pimped out Pimpmobile for my Dark Elder Lord with his Incubi. Cool, good idea. But don't just collect a 2,000 point list. I always recommend people who are going to start a new force, look at, if you have a 2,000 point list that you want, go out there and buy 2,500 points worth of stuff. 3,000 points. Get yourself an extra 25% or 50%. Because the problem is, if you buy a specific list, like if you buy a 2,000 point list, and then an FAQ drops, or a new edition comes out, or a new book comes out, your army may no longer be valid. And then what do you do? Do you have to sell it? Do you just shelve it? What do you do? There's no real point in collecting just a list. You want to collect a faction, because the key, and I think I've said this before, I think this is one of the reasons why when Imperial Guard first came out in 8th edition, they were so powerful. Yes, we had some really, really good things, but we were really, really powerful, and I maintain this stance. The number one reason was because the only people that had Imperial Guard forces when 8th edition dropped were people who collected Imperial Guard. They didn't have an Imperial Guard 2,000 point list. We collected Imperial Guard. I don't know an Imperial Guard player, well, a long time Imperial Guard player, who doesn't have 5,000, 6,000 points worth of stuff. You know, that's just how it is. I think I'm over the 10,000 point mark now. I know I've got a stupid amount of Imperial Guard, and the point is that when 8th edition dropped, and people were saying, "Oh yeah, taking 300 conscripts is really, really powerful, but who's going to have the time to build and paint 300, 400 conscripts? No one will ever do that. It's just a theory list." I just quietly raised my hand. I was like, I'll do it, because I have 400 infantry. I have the ability to run. Maybe, I don't think I've got I'll have about 300 lasgun guys in my army. I know I can comfortably run. When I did my World War I style list, I ran 6 units of 30 conscripts, and I could have run another 2 blobs. And that's what made Imperial Guard so powerful, is we had these collections to draw upon. And when Lehman Russes got a buff, I was like, okay, I have 12 Lehman Russes. I'll run a Lehman Russ army. And that's what the point of this video is about. It's like, if you're going to collect Imperial Guard, or any faction, let's use Imperial Guard as a basis, don't go out there and just think of one list. Collect a force, collect an entire faction's worth of models. I think I have one of every Imperial Guard model. I think. I can't think of one I don't have, bar Forge World, which is a completely different kettle of fish. But that's which means, and I like to have like at least 2 of everything that the Imperial Guard has to offer, because then if something changes, I don't need to go out there and buy a bunch of stuff. I'm already there. I've already got my stuff, and I haven't. I went at the end of 7th edition. I went out and bought myself a couple of Manticores, not because I thought they'd be good for 8th edition. I just liked the model. And as it turns out, 8th edition drop, Manticores are fantastic. I have 3 Basilisks, not because Basilisks are amazing, but because I thought they looked cool. I converted mine actually so that they could be used as Basilisks or Griffins or Wyverns. It wasn't a very elegant conversion. I just sawed the barrel off, and I can put the barrel back on if I want to. But the point is that that was an easy thing to do, and that's what I would encourage everyone who's thinking of starting Imperial Guard. Don't go in, if you're thinking of starting Imperial Guard, don't go into it with the mentality of, oh, I'm just going to collect a 2,000 point army. When you commit to a faction, properly commit to it and say, I'm going to buy 2,500 points worth of this army. I'm going to buy 3,000 points worth of this army. Because then, one, you gives yourself redundancy, gives yourself immunity to addition changes and other things. But also it gives you a true feel for that faction, which I think is the most important thing. So, and I think the best example, real life example that pretty much any Imperial Guard commander can relate to in 8th edition is conscripts getting nerfed into the ground. Conscripts getting nerfed into the ground, if you were one of these bandwagoners, it meant you no longer could play your army. If you were a proper, true Imperial Guard commander, it just meant you just went, okay, it pissed us off, but we shrugged our shoulders and just went, I guess I'll just use all these flamers and grenade launchers and plasma guns and melter guns to my and just add them in, and now I've got a bunch of infantry squads. Or, oh look, I've got 30 sergeants. Oh look, I'll just make, I'll just take 30 infantry squads instead. That was easy. The point is that if you have this bigger collection, I'm not trying to, you know, I don't want people to think I'm there being elitist, saying, oh, you know, you're not a true Imperial Guard player unless you've got a big collection. No, of course not. We've all got to start somewhere. That's not the impression I want to get at all. The impression I want to get is it's good to, one, immerse yourself in a faction, two, buy the models that you like. Obviously keep an eye on what is good and what is bad, but just keep an eye, you know, if you like the look of it, buy it, because more than likely it'll become good at some point. And three, it's just important to have that ability to adapt and change, and not, you know, throw your hands up in the air and sell a load of stuff when it no longer becomes viable. But yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. You know, I think it'd be really cool if there's any people want to leave lots of examples of, you know, times in 8th edition when having that flexibility has really helped you, or times, you know, when you've seen people buy these armies and they've become invalid. If there's any, I thought of the ones I came up with is Razor Wing, Brimstones, and Storm Ravens. Conscript spam obviously as well, but I'm sure there are other ones. So if there's loads of people leave lots of comments down below, it'd be good to get an idea, because it would give us an idea of how active Games Workshop has been in trying to balance the game. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and of course I'll see you guys next time.